We denounce these illegal tariffs, and we think that they're a direct attack against our workers and now in the copper industry. And so we'll fight against
$25 billion. That's not a budget line item or a government program. That's the crater Ford Motor Company just admitted will blow through their 2025 financial projections because of one man's decision to weaponize trade policy. And Ford isn't alone. Stellantis could watch 3/4 of their profits evaporate if these tariffs stick. But here's what should terrify every American. The country we've called our closest ally for over a century just drew a red line in permanent marker, and the date they circled is July 21st. Picture this scene from early March. President Trump signs an executive order imposing a 25% tariff on all Canadian imports, with energy products hit at 10%. The justification? National security concerns about illegal immigration and drug trafficking from our northern neighbor. Yes, you heard that right. Canada, the nation that shares the world's longest undefended border with us, suddenly became a threat requiring the same trade weapons we'd use against hostile nations. Within hours, Ottawa's response landed like a counterpunch. Prime Minister Mark Carney announced retaliatory tariffs on $30 billion of American goods, with plans to expand that number to $155 billion if Washington didn't back down. The gloves were off, and what started as an economic disagreement was morphing into something far more dangerous. By June 4th, the situation had spiraled beyond anyone's worst predictions. The United States doubled down, cranking tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum to 50%. Think about that number for a moment. Half the value of every pound of Canadian metal crossing our border now goes straight to government coffers. For an auto industry that depends on parts crossing the Detroit-Windsor border 6 times before a single truck rolls off the assembly line, this wasn't just a tax. It was an execution order. The human cost started showing up in pink slips and shuttered factories within weeks. Stellantis pulled the plug on their Brampton assembly operations, sending 900 American workers home. General Motors halted their Silao, Mexico pickup line and warned their Windsor facility might go dark for 3 weeks. These aren't temporary hiccups. These are the death rattles of a supply chain that took decades to perfect. But the real shock came from the markets. As one veteran trader in Chicago put it, "We've seen trade wars before, but this is different. This is like watching your brother punch you in the face at Thanksgiving dinner." The Midwest Aluminum Premium, that benchmark every manufacturer watches like a hawk, exploded to 61 cents per pound by June 9th. That's a 162% increase since January. Hot-rolled steel coil in Chicago hit $881 per ton, up by a third from last fall. Those aren't just numbers on a commodities screen. They're price tags that show up on everything from the beer can in your fridge to the car in your driveway. Coca-Cola bottlers started pushing customers toward plastic bottles because aluminum cans became too expensive. The National Association of Home Builders calculated that these metal price spikes would add nearly $11,000 to the cost of a new single-family home. For first-time buyers in Ohio, that increase alone priced 1 in 12 families out of the market entirely. Foreign Minister Melanie Joly, who transformed from diplomat to street fighter overnight, gathered Canada's mining chiefs in Ottawa for an emergency summit. Her message was brutally simple. Washington has until July 21st to reverse course, or Canada unleashes economic weapons that will make current tariffs look like gentle suggestions. The plan? A 25% tariff on steel exports, followed by complete bans on hydroelectric power, primary aluminum, and softwood lumber. Each target was chosen with surgical precision to inflict maximum pain. Ontario's hydroelectric dams power factories across Buffalo and Syracuse. Quebec's aluminum feeds every third pickup truck rolling out of Michigan. West Coast lumber frames half the new homes in the Pacific Northwest. Ontario Premier Doug Ford confirmed his province stands ready to add a 25% surcharge on every megawatt-hour of electricity flowing south, costing American buyers up to 300,000 Canadian dollars per day. The border itself tells the story of a relationship in freefall. Canada Border Services data revealed truck traffic across the Ambassador Bridge plummeted 18% in just 10 days. Cross-border passenger trips collapsed by 76% compared to last year. Travel agencies started steering vacationers toward Spain and Croatia instead of Florida. Airlines slashed 320,000 seats on Canada-US routes for August alone. What makes this catastrophe even more surreal is the weapon Washington chose. Section 232 of the 1962 Trade Expansion Act was a Cold War relic designed to protect America from Soviet steel that might compromise our missile systems. Now, it's being aimed at the country that supplies Detroit with half the metal-keeping assembly lines running. As one trade lawyer in Washington observed, if Canada is a national security threat, then words have lost all meaning. The ripple effects spread far beyond North America. In early July, the White House sent identical letters to 20 capitals worldwide, demanding new bilateral trade agreements or face blanket tariffs up to 50%. Foreign investors responded by dumping U.S. treasuries en masse, yanking billions out of New York in a single week. The dollar's share of global reserves fell to its lowest level in 3 decades, while nervous allies started pricing more contracts in euros and yuan. Canadian exporters didn't wait for politicians to sort things out. Since the tariff war began, Canada's reliance on the U.S. market dropped from 78 to 68% of total exports. Sales to Europe, Australia, and Japan surged 42% as businesses scrambled to find new customers from London to Jakarta. Every shipment rerouted, every contract rewritten in euros instead of dollars, represents another crack in a partnership that once seemed unbreakable. The San Francisco Federal Reserve attempted to quantify the damage, warning that if August tariffs hit full force, real household income could slide by roughly $320 on the median paycheck before New Year's. That's not an abstraction. That's groceries, gas money, and Christmas presents that won't get bought. It's the difference between making rent and missing it. The clock struck midnight on July 21st, and Canada's ultimatum expired with the finality of a judge's gavel. Within hours, Quebec's aluminum smelters received government orders to halt all shipments to American buyers. The lights literally went out in Buffalo manufacturing districts as Ontario cut power exports by 70% overnight. British Columbia's lumber mills redirected their entire output to Asian markets, leaving American homebuilders scrambling for wood that suddenly cost 40% more from alternative suppliers. But Ottawa wasn't finished. Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland unveiled what she called the sovereignty premium, a floating tariff that would automatically increase by 5% every month. Washington maintained its trade barriers. If they want to treat us like adversaries, she told reporters in Toronto, then we'll show them what real economic warfare looks like. Americans will learn that geography isn't just destiny, it's leverage. The White House response came swift and brutal. By July 23rd, President Trump signed executive orders banning all Canadian energy imports and slapping 100% tariffs on maple syrup, canola oil, and potash. The Pentagon was instructed to accelerate plans for domestic rare earth processing facilities, while the State Department began reviewing all defense cooperation agreements with Canada. One senior administration official, speaking anonymously, warned that everything is on the table, including NORAD. Wall Street's reaction was immediate and visceral. The S&P 500 shed 400 points in 90 minutes as algorithmic traders dumped anything exposed to cross-border supply chains. Ford stock cratered 17% in a single session. General Motors fell 21%. Magna International, the auto parts giant with facilities straddling both sides of the border, lost a third of its market value before trading was halted. The human wreckage accumulated with shocking speed. Windsor's unemployment rate shot from 6 to 14% in just 3 weeks as auto plants shuttered. Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan watched its largest employer, a steel finishing facility, close permanently after losing access to Canadian raw materials. The mayor of Detroit estimated that every day of full tariffs cost his city $12 million in lost economic activity. By early August, supermarket shelves told the story of a continental divorce in progress. Canola oil disappeared from American stores, replaced by more expensive alternatives that pushed cooking oil prices up 35%. Canadian beef vanished from restaurant menus. The price of breakfast cereal spiked as Manitoba wheat was rerouted to European buyers. Even McDonald's had to reformulate their coffee blend when Canadian suppliers cut them off. The construction industry crumbled as Canadian lumber vanished, pushing home prices up $27,000 and slashing housing starts by 43%. 4 million buyers were priced out. Energy markets spiraled too. Natural gas tripled in New England, and Michigan gas hit $5 per gallon. Canadian refineries halted shipments, forcing New York to declare an emergency and deploy the National Guard to curb hoarding before winter. The crisis reshaped markets overnight. The Canada-US trade war shattered decades of trust, sparking NATO panic, corporate relocations, and economic chaos. Allies distanced themselves, companies fled, and smuggling surged. Inflation soared, jobs vanished, and relations collapsed. By September, markets braced for a permanent split. Border economies disintegrated, farmers suffered, and public sentiment plummeted. The July 21st ultimatum marked the death of North America's oldest friendship, replaced by fortified borders, broken alliances, and a future neither side recognized.